On my wedding day, my son and daughter-in-law mocked my new husband right in front of 400 guests. They said he wasn't a stepfather. They called him trash. My daughter-in-law's entire family roared with laughter, while I felt the world collapsing beneath my feet. I stood up, shaking with fury, and threw every single one of them out of the reception. It was then that my husband looked at me with a profound calm I had never seen before and said something that changed my life forever. "Honey, I'm a billionaire, but let me tell you how I got to this moment, because what happened next was something none of them could have ever imagined." Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. It all started 3 hours earlier when I, Eleanor, or Ellie, as my friends call me, at 61 years old, stood in the most magnificent event space I had ever seen. 400 guests filled every seat, upholstered in ivory velvet. The tables shimmered with cream silk linens and towering centerpieces of white and gold flowers that looked like they were pulled straight out of a magazine. I had hired the best musicians, the top caterer, all paid for with my life savings. I wanted this day to be flawless, because after 15 years of widowhood, of loneliness, of nights spent crying in silence, I had finally found love again. Elias, or Eli Vance, stood beside me at the altar in his modest but immaculate gray suit. His silver hair was neatly combed, his hands calloused from years of honest work. He wasn't rich. He didn't drive a luxury car and lived in a small apartment in a simple neighborhood. But when he looked at me, I felt like the most valuable woman in the universe. That was the only thing that mattered. Then I heard the first loud, mocking, venomous laugh. It came from the third row, exactly where my son, Darius, was seated next to his wife, Tasha. Darius was 38 years old, wearing an Italian suit that cost more than $3,000 and a Rolex watch on his wrist. He had always made it clear to me that money was the most important thing in life. Tasha was worse. That 35-year-old woman in her overly tight blood-red dress with long black painted nails and a superior attitude had made my life hell since the day she married my son. She came from a family that considered themselves upper crust, though we all knew her father had made his fortune through shady business dealings. "Look at that," I heard Tasha whisper to her mother, loud enough for me to hear. "The old woman is marrying a pauper." Her mother, Brenda Jenkins, a woman with too many fake gold necklaces clanging around her neck, laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. "Poor Ellie. At her age, she can't catch anything better." I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept my gaze fixed on the minister. Eli gently squeezed my hand as if to say, "It'll be all right." But things were just getting started. The officiant continued the ceremony, speaking about love, respect, and the sacred union of marriage. I tried to concentrate on his words, on the moment I had dreamed of for months, but the stifled laughter and cruel comments kept coming from my own family's section. "Did you see his shoes?" one of Tasha's cousins whispered. "They look like they were bought at a thrift store." "And that suit?" another added. "My gardener dresses better." The entire row of the Jenkins family chuckled under their breath. They were like vultures waiting for the perfect moment to attack. I felt my heart breaking into pieces, but Eli remained serene, dignified, as if none of it affected him. That gave me the strength to continue. The moment for the vows arrived. When Eli began to speak, his voice was firm and full of genuine emotion. "Ellie, from the day I met you, I knew you were the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I don't have material wealth to offer you, but I give you my whole heart, my eternal loyalty, and my promise to make you happy every day I have left." A few people in the audience sighed, moved. I had tears in my eyes, but then I heard Darius let out a loud, sarcastic laugh that echoed through the ballroom. "This is pathetic," my son said out loud without any shame. He stood up with his champagne glass in his hand, swaying slightly. He'd been drinking before the ceremony. Seriously, Mom, this is the man you chose? This miserable old man? The room fell into absolute silence. 400 people held their breath. The minister stopped speaking and looked at me with concern. Eli squeezed my hand harder, but his expression remained tranquil, almost compassionate. "Darius, please," I tried to say, but my voice came out broken, humiliated. "No, Mom, someone has to tell the truth here." Darius walked to the center aisle, gesturing dramatically. "You worked your whole life. You sacrificed for me. Dad left you a good inheritance, and this is what you do with it? Marry a nobody who probably just wants your money?" Tasha stood up too, a malicious smile on her lips. "Darius is right, Ellie. That's not a stepfather. That's trash you picked up off the street." Her whole family erupted in laughter. Her mother, father, uncles, cousins, all laughing, pointing, pulling out their cell phones to record the moment. It was like they were at a circus and we were the clowns. But then something inside me snapped. It wasn't sadness. It was fury. A burning rage that shot from my feet to my head. I pulled my hand from Eli's and walked straight toward my son. "You know what, Darius?" My voice sounded different, stronger, firmer than I had heard it in years. "You're right about one thing. Someone does have to tell the truth here." The silence in that room was so dense you could cut it with a knife. 400 people stared at me with wide eyes, waiting to see what humiliated Ellie would do. My son Darius wore that arrogant smirk, the same one he used as a child when he thought he had won an argument. Tasha stood beside him, arms crossed, with that look of superiority I hated so much. Her entire family continued to snicker, enjoying the spectacle as if it were the most entertaining thing they'd seen in years. "The truth," I repeated, feeling the weight of every word leaving my mouth, "is that I spent 35 years of my life married to your father. 35 years where I worked 12-hour days cleaning other people's homes so you could go to the best schools. 35 years where I broke my back, wrecked my hands, and sacrificed my health and youth to give you everything you needed." Darius blinked, and for a second I saw a flicker of discomfort in his eyes, but he quickly covered it up by taking another sip of his champagne. "Your father was a good man," I continued, feeling tears beginning to well up, but refusing to let them fall. "But when he died 15 years ago, he left me alone, completely alone. Do you know how many times I came to your house asking to spend time with me? How many times I called you crying because the loneliness was killing me?" "Mom, don't make a scene," Darius said, but his voice sounded less sure now. "A scene?" I laughed, but it was a bitter, painful laugh. "A scene is being alone every Christmas because you were too busy with Tasha's family. A scene is spending my 61st, 60th, 59th birthdays completely by myself because you couldn't even be bothered to send a text." Some people in the audience began to murmur. I could see looks of disapproval aimed at my son. But Tasha wasn't going to stay quiet. "Oh, please," she spat, stepping forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Always the victim, aren't you, Ellie? Always complaining, always needing attention. You know what? Darius has his own life. He can't be babysitting you like you're a child." "Babysitting me?" I whispered, feeling something inside me begin to shatter. I didn't ask to be babysat. I just asked for a little love, a little respect, a little of the affection I gave him his whole life. Eli was still standing by the altar, watching the scene with a serene but alert expression. He didn't intervene. He didn't stop me. He was simply there, giving me the space to say what I had held inside for so many years. "And now," my voice trembled but remained strong, "now that I've finally found someone who makes me feel alive again, someone who treats me with dignity and respect, you come here to destroy it? You, my own son, come here to humiliate me in front of everyone? Because that man is a gold digger," Darius yelled, pointing at Eli with contempt. "Look at him. Look closely. He dresses like a bum. He lives in a dumpy apartment. He probably doesn't even have a bank account, and I'm supposed to be happy my mother is marrying that?" Tasha's family clapped and shouted in support. "Exactly," yelled Tasha's father, Larry Jenkins, a heavy man whose greasy mustache seemed to hang over his cheap cigar smell. "That miserable old man just wants your mother's money. It's obvious. You should be grateful Darius is worried about you," Tasha's mother Brenda added, shaking her multiple gold bracelets ostentatiously. "He's just protecting your assets." "My assets?" The words left my mouth like venom. "Since when did you care about my assets, Darius? Since when did you care about anything other than your own benefit?" "That's not fair," he protested, his face turning red. "Not fair? Let me tell you what's not fair. It wasn't fair that when I needed $1,000 for surgery 3 years ago, you told me you had no money, but 2 weeks later, you bought that Rolex you're wearing. It wasn't fair that when I asked to borrow $5,000 to repair my house, you made me sign a document with interest, as if I were a stranger. It isn't fair that every time I asked for help, you treated me like a bother, like a burden." The murmurs in the audience grew louder. I could see some people nodding their heads, others looking at Darius with critical eyes. My friends, the few I had invited, had tears in their eyes. Vivian Lewis, my best friend for 30 years, was openly crying, but Tasha wasn't finished. That woman never knew when to shut up. "You know what's really going on here, Ellie," she said, walking toward me with that superior attitude that made my blood boil. "You're desperate. You're old, you're alone, and you grabbed the first man who paid you any attention. It's pathetic. It's embarrassing. And frankly, my whole family is here as witnesses to the worst decision you've ever made." Her family roared in approval. The cousins, the uncles, even the friends they had brought, all laughing, all mocking. Some were recording with their phones, capturing every second of my humiliation to share later on social media. I could imagine the captions, "Crazy old lady marries a beggar," or "The most pathetic wedding of the year." I felt something inside me finally break. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't pain, it was determination, a strength I didn't know I possessed. I turned and walked to Eli, who was still standing by the altar with that inexplicable calm. I took his hand and looked him in the eyes. "Are you sure you want to marry me?" I asked in a low voice. "Because my family is a mess, and they clearly don't deserve to be here." Eli smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it, something I couldn't quite decipher. "Ellie, my love, I've never been surer of anything in my life, and you are right. There are people here who don't deserve to witness this moment." I turned back to the 400 guests. Most of them were good people, true friends, colleagues, neighbors who cared about me. But there was a specific group that had turned the most important day of my life into a nightmare. "Darius," I said, and my voice resonated through the room with an authority I had never used with my son. "You, Tasha, and your entire family, out of my wedding, out of my life." The silence that followed was deafening. Darius stared at me as if I had slapped him. "What?" he stammered. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life. I want you to leave now." Tasha let out a hysterical laugh. "You're throwing us out? Your own family?" "Not my family," I replied coldly. "You and your parasites, yes. You have 5 minutes to leave this room, or I'll call security." Darius looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. His face went from shock to indignation in seconds. "You're throwing me out of your wedding? Your only son?" "Yes," I replied without hesitating for a second. "I'm throwing out you, your wife, and all those vipers you brought with you." Tasha stepped forward, her index finger pointing at me menacingly. Her black nails looked like claws ready to strike. "You can't do this, you stupid old woman. You have no right." "I have every right in the world. This is my wedding. I paid every cent for this event. I hired this venue. I paid for the food. I hired the musicians, and I have every right to decide who stays and who goes. And you are definitely going." Tasha's father, Larry, got up from his seat, his belly hanging over his belt. "Who do you think you are talking to us like that? My family has influence in this city. We can ruin you." "Ruin me then," I said, feeling a boldness I didn't know existed inside me. "You've already ruined the most important day of my life. What more can you do to me?" Tasha's mother, Brenda, also stood up, making all her gold bracelets clank scandalously. "This is an insult! A total lack of respect! We came all the way here to support this ridiculous marriage, and this is how you repay us?" "Support?" I laughed bitterly. "You call mocking my husband, calling him trash, and humiliating him in front of everyone support? That's not support. That's pure cruelty." One of Tasha's cousins, a young guy with too much hair gel, shouted from his table, "Your husband is trash! We all know it. Just look at him. He looks like a bum you picked up off the street." Several members of their family laughed and applauded. They were enjoying this. They were truly enjoying tearing me down on my own special day. Eli finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. But there was a tone of firmness I had never heard from him before. "Young man, you don't know me. You know nothing about me, and yet you feel entitled to insult me. What does that say about you?" The cousin immediately fell silent, as if something in Eli's voice had disarmed him. But Darius wasn't going to give up so easily. He approached me. His breath smelled of alcohol, and his face was red with fury. "Mom, if you throw us out now, if you do this, you'll never see me again. You'll never see your grandkids again, I swear to God." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. My grandchildren, Miles, 6 years old, and Chloe, 4. I love them with all my heart. The thought of never seeing them again was devastating. But then I looked at Eli. I looked at this man who had treated me with more respect and dignity in 6 months of dating than my own son had in the last 15 years, and I knew I had to choose. I had to choose my own happiness for once in my life. "If that is your decision, Darius," I said, and my voice cracked a little, but I didn't stop, "then so be it. I will not let you manipulate me anymore. I will not let you use me as your personal bank while treating me like trash when you don't need me." "You're selfish," Tasha screamed. "A selfish old woman who is choosing a stranger over her own family." "He's not a stranger," I replied calmly. "He's the man I love. And if you can't respect that, then you don't have a place in my life." Darius looked at me with so much hatred that it almost made me step back. "You're going to regret this. When that old man robs you of everything you have, when he leaves you with nothing, don't come crying to my door for help." "Don't worry," I said, feeling the tears finally start to roll down my cheeks. "I won't." The atmosphere in the ballroom was one of absolute tension. The other guests watched the scene with a mix of horror and fascination. Some of my friends seemed to want to intervene, but they stood still, unsure what to do. Vivian Lewis, my best friend, finally stood up. She was a 63-year-old woman with short white hair and a strong personality I had always admired. "Darius, Tasha, if you have any decency, you will leave right now and let Ellie be. What you are doing is cruel and unforgivable." "You shut up, you nosy old woman," Tasha snapped. "This isn't your problem." "It is my problem when I see my best friend being abused by her own family," Vivian replied firmly. "And honestly, after seeing how you behave, I perfectly understand why Ellie prefers to marry Elias. He has more class in his little finger than all of you combined." That further enraged Tasha's family. They started shouting all at once, creating absolute chaos. Insults flew through the air. Some people started getting up from their seats. The ballroom that, half an hour ago, was a place of elegance and celebration, now looked like a battleground. "Enough!" I shouted with all the strength in my lungs. My voice echoed through the space, silencing everyone instantly. "I will call security right now if you don't leave voluntarily." I gestured to the venue manager, a tall professional man who had been watching everything from the entrance. He nodded and started walking toward us with 2 security guards. "We don't need you to kick us out," Darius said with disdain. "We are leaving of our own free will. This place stinks anyway. And you," he pointed his finger at me, "you disgust me. I hope you are happy with your decision, because you will never have your family again." "Real family doesn't treat you like this," I replied, and I felt Eli move closer and take my hand, giving me strength. Tasha grabbed her designer bag, the same one I had helped her buy last year when she borrowed $3,000 she never paid back. Let's get out of here. This wedding is a bad joke anyway." One by one, Tasha's entire family started getting up from their seats. There were about 20 people in total. They gathered their belongings with exaggerated movements, making as much noise as possible, making sure their exit was as dramatic as their behavior throughout the ceremony. "This is not over," Tasha's father yelled as he walked toward the exit. "Everyone in the city will know what kind of woman you are." "Let them know," I said with a calm that surprised me. "I don't care what they think anymore." As the procession of toxic people left the room, some even pushing chairs and throwing napkins on the floor as a final act of rebellion, the rest of the guests remained in absolute silence. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Darius was the last to leave. He stopped at the door, looked at me one last time, and said, "Goodbye, Mom. I hope your new life with that loser is worth losing your only son." And he left. The door closed behind him with a final sound that resonated in my heart like a definitive slam. I stood there in the middle of the ballroom trembling. I had just kicked my son out of my wedding. I had just potentially broken my relationship with him forever. I had just lost access to my grandchildren, the only innocent creatures in this whole horrible situation. Tears fell freely down my face. My makeup was ruined. My champagne-colored dress had tear stains. The happiest day of my life had turned into an absolute nightmare. Then I felt Eli's arms wrap around me. He hugged me with such tenderness, with such strength, that for a moment I felt everything would be all right. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered against his chest. "I ruined everything. I ruined our wedding." "You didn't ruin anything," he said softly, stroking my hair. "You did the right thing, the brave thing, and I'm very proud of you." We stayed like that for a moment, embraced in the middle of the chaos that remained. The other guests slowly began to applaud, first Vivian, then other friends, until the whole room was clapping. It wasn't applause for celebration, it was applause for support, for solidarity. Eli gently separated from me and took my hands. He looked me in the eyes with an intensity I had never seen before. "Ellie, my love, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" I asked, wiping my tears. He took a deep breath, as if he were about to reveal something momentous. "I'm not who you think I am." My heart stopped for a second. What did that mean? After everything that had just happened, now he had a secret too? "Eli, what are you saying?" My voice trembled. He smiled, but it was a strange smile, sad and happy at the same time. "Honey, I'm a billionaire." I stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. The words had come out of his mouth, they had reached my ears, but my brain refused to process them. "What did you say?" "I am a billionaire, Ellie," Eli repeated with absolute calm. "I have over $2 billion in assets, properties in a dozen countries, companies, investments, everything." I felt my legs begin to fail. Vivian rushed toward me and held my arm. "Ellie, breathe, breathe, friend." But I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. Everything that had happened in the last hour, the humiliation, the pain, kicking out my own son, and now this. I don't understand. I don't understand anything. You live in a small apartment, you drive an old car, your clothes. "It's all a conscious choice," Eli said, and his voice was so gentle that it made me want to cry again. After my first wife passed away 8 years ago, after seeing how everyone around me only wanted my money, I decided to live simply. I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for what I have. The room was in complete silence. Everyone listened to every word with absolute attention. This was more dramatic than any soap opera they had ever seen. "That's why you wear those clothes?" I whispered, beginning to understand. "That's why you live in that place? That's why you never let me pay when we went out?" "Exactly," he nodded, and I found exactly what I was looking for. I found you, Ellie, a genuine, kind-hearted woman who treated me with respect and affection, even when you thought I had nothing to offer except my love. Tears returned to my eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of something I couldn't yet name. "Why are you telling me now? Why here, after all this?" Eli looked toward the door where Darius and Tasha had left minutes before. "Because I wanted you to see who they really are. I wanted you to see their true character when they thought I was nothing, and I wanted you to make your own decision about them before knowing the truth about me." "My God," I whispered, covering my face with my hands. My son just insulted and humiliated a billionaire." "Your son just insulted and humiliated the man you love," Eli gently corrected. "The money shouldn't change that." He was right. He was completely right, but my mind was still spinning, processing this impossible information. $2 billion. How? Where from? Eli smiled, and for the first time, I saw a flash of pride in his eyes. "I started with nothing, just like you. I worked construction for 20 years. I saved every penny. I invested in real estate when no one else would. I bought properties everyone said were worthless. I built an empire brick by brick. But when my wife, my beloved Letitia, died of cancer, all that money meant nothing. I couldn't save her. I couldn't make her stay with me for one more day." His voice cracked at the end, and I saw the genuine pain in his eyes. This man had suffered, had loved, and lost, just like me. "After her death," he continued, "everyone around me changed. My friends only called when they needed money. The women who pursued me only saw dollars. My own in-laws tried to sue me for the inheritance. I realized that money had poisoned all my relationships, so I decided to disappear from the radar. I maintained my businesses, but I completely changed my lifestyle." Vivian was still by my side, supporting me, but even she was slack-jawed, listening to this story. "Meeting you, Ellie," Eli took my hands in his. "It was like coming back to life. You treated me with dignity. You listened to me when I spoke. You laughed at my bad jokes. You cooked me your home-cooked meals. You invited me into your house without caring that my clothes were old or my car was rusty. You loved me for who I am." I don't know what to say," I stammered. My world had been completely turned upside down in less than 2 hours. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said, tenderly caressing my cheek. "I know it's a lot to process. I know all this is overwhelming, but I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that you made the right decision, that defending our love, defending our relationship was worth it." Suddenly, everything began to click into place in my mind like puzzle pieces. The small details I had noticed but never questioned. The way Eli always seemed so sure of himself. The way he spoke about business with deep knowledge. The times he had casually mentioned traveling the world. His education, his vocabulary, his mannerisms. It all made sense. "Did anyone else know?" I asked. "Did anyone know the truth about you?" "My lawyer, Marcus King," Eli replied. "He's here today in row 12. He's been managing my affairs for the last 8 years. I asked him to come to our wedding as a witness." I looked toward row 12 and saw a distinguished man in his 50s, wearing a clearly expensive suit, nodding his head as our eyes met. He looked like someone important. How had I not noticed him before? "And what happens now?" I asked, feeling completely lost. "What does all this mean for us?" Eli smiled with the same love I had seen in his eyes from the first day we met. "It means that now we can start our life together without secrets. It means I can give you everything you deserve. It means you'll never have to worry about money, security, or anything ever again. But more important than all that," he squeezed my hands harder, "it means I found someone who truly loves me, and that is worth more than all the millions in the world." Tears streamed down my face freely. Now I couldn't control them. It was all too much. The emotion, the shock, the revelation, everything mixed in a whirlwind of feelings I couldn't process. Vivian hugged me tightly. "Girl, I always told you this man was special. I always knew it." Other guests began to approach, offering words of support and congratulation. But I remained in a state of shock, trying to process this new reality. "There's something else you should know," Eli said softly. "The $5,000 your son Darius lent you with interest? I already paid it off without you knowing. I deposited the full amount into his account 3 months ago." "What?" My voice came out as a shriek. I didn't want you to have that debt hanging over your shoulders, but I asked Mark to do it anonymously. I wanted to see if Darius would mention it to you, if he would give you the money back, or if he would tell you the debt was settled. He never said anything to you, did he?" I shook my head slowly, feeling a new wave of betrayal hit me. He never said a word. In fact, 2 weeks ago he called me asking when I was going to pay him. Eli sighed sadly. "I figured. That's why I needed you to see his true character before we got married. I needed you to know exactly who you were dealing with." Then everything made sense. The test. It had all been a test not for me, but to reveal the true nature of the people around me, and they had all failed spectacularly. "My son," I whispered, feeling my heart break again. My own son was scamming me. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," Eli said, hugging me. "I know it hurts. I know it's devastating, but it was better for you to know now than to continue living in ignorance." He was right. Of course he was right. But that didn't make it hurt any less. My only child, the baby I had carried in my womb for 9 months, the boy I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, had been robbing me, lying to me, using me, and today at my wedding, he had shown his true face. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling completely exhausted. Eli looked me in the eyes with determination. "Now we continue with our wedding. Now we get married, surrounded by the people who truly love and support us, and after that, we start our new life together." The minister, who had remained silent throughout the drama, approached us with an expression of genuine compassion. He was an elderly man, about 70 years old, with decades of experience officiating weddings, but even for him, this had been extraordinary. "Do you wish to continue with the ceremony?" he asked softly. I looked at Eli. I looked at the room full of people who had witnessed my humiliation and my defense. I looked at Vivian, who was smiling at me through her tears, and I knew the answer. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, we want to continue." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of emotion. The minister resumed the ceremony where we had left off. This time, there were no interruptions, no cruel laughter, no hurtful comments. There was only love, support, and a completely different energy in the atmosphere. When Eli placed the ring on my finger, I felt as if I were starting a completely new life. And when he declared us husband and wife, the room erupted in genuine, heartfelt applause. I kissed my husband, and in that moment, all the pain of the last few hours momentarily vanished. I was happy. I was married to the love of my life, and nothing else mattered at that instant. The reception was beautiful. Without the toxic presence of Darius, Tasha, and their family, the atmosphere completely transformed. People danced, laughed, and celebrated with genuine joy. My friends constantly approached me to congratulate me and tell me how brave I had been. Some even admitted they had always thought Darius treated me badly, but had never dared to say so. During dinner, Eli stood up and asked for everyone's attention. The room fell silent. "I want to thank everyone who stayed today," his voice began, resonating with natural authority. "You have been witnesses to something very difficult, but also something very important. You have seen an incredible woman defend